What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Bat Flip, where we discuss everything baseballs. I'm Landon Raby. With me, Dylan Taylor. It's good to be back. Didn't get to do this last weekend. Was recovering from a wedding, and but congrats on the Vols for beating Kentucky. We didn't have to talk about that. That's just something that Tennessee does is beat Kentucky. So um, Tennessee finally gets a road victory this weekend against South Carolina, winning that Friday game 5-0, and winning that rubber match on Saturday 12-1. The starting pitching, man, it was just phenomenal all weekend, and it was finally that starting pitching that I think everybody was expecting to see all season long. Um, and it just hasn't been that way. Some inconsistency here and there, and but they finally put it together. So that trio of Lindsey, Dolander, and Beam shoved it 19 and 2/3 innings. They had combined for 10 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, and 22 strikeouts in those 3 games. So man, what a performance by those guys! And I just think it's looking like Tennessee is playing its best baseball at the end of the season at the right time. And so this team is dangerous going into postseason play.
Well, not only just in the wins too, but the outing from Dolander, which wound up being a loss the first game Saturday. I mean, shoved. I mean, that's vintage. It's weird to say vintage because it's only the second season you've seen him in a Tennessee uniform, but that's vintage Dolander. Like that's the stuff that, well, like you said, you thought you were going to see all year. What you saw for the majority of last year, and I mean, it's I would say just about every area. You were pretty much firing all cylinders. Burns obviously got touched up a little bit, but as far as the starting pitching, I don't know. Thinking about it, I don't know that you could ask for any better, honestly.
Yeah, and they dealt with some adversity. To start this series, you had the rainouts, you had the doubleheader, you had post, 7 innings. You didn't know if Jared Dickey was going to be in your lineup. You got that kind of media saying that, hey, they haven't won a road series yet. You got postseason play to worry about. So I think a lot of this was kind of shows the makeup of this team a little bit, and how they are kind of not letting things bother them. I mean, you look at game two, you lose that one, on a maybe a bad pitching decision looking back on it. Um, I think in that series, with all that kind of going on, I think South Carolina has all the momentum, and Tennessee just beat the brakes off of them.
You really worry just because, especially because the way that second game got away from you. Like we talked about how Dolander was pretty much dominating the whole game. It To me, it's always a little bit worrisome. Like if you come out and you just South Carolina pulls away, and which it trips me up with those being 7 inning games. But if South Carolina pulls away early in that second game, to me it doesn't bother me as much just because you got a few innings before you start a new one right after that. But with most of the damage coming in the sixth, seventh, right at the end of that first game, kind of worried me that would translate over the third game, whether it was South Carolina's bat staying hot or just us not having it that day. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, the flip completely, or the switch completely flipped on that one, because it's the third game was honestly never close.
Yeah, and I mean Tennessee. I thought our pitching would be better than South Carolina's. They've struggled with some injuries. The lineup was what I was kind of worried about, and Tennessee out hit South Carolina 22-15. I mean, you can chalk up a lot of that to our pitching, but I think Tennessee, and those, especially in those 2 wins, hit the ball really well. The bottom of the lineup, it was different people. Hunter Hensley had a great game on Friday, going 4 for 5, 3 RBIs. Dylan Dreiling hit a 2-run shot, and then you know only having 3 hits in that first game on Saturday, and then game three you just destroyed them. I mean, 10 hits. You had Christian Scott had a big home run. Cal Stark had a big home run. Griffin Merritt, Maui Ahuna had a couple hits in that game. So I mean, it was just kind of a little bit of everybody, and I think this is kind of what this lineup has shown you throughout this stretch of games where, ever since that Tennessee Tech game, it just seems a little bit different.
Yeah, and I probably won't get the opportunity to later, so I did want to make this very clear. I was probably going to do it last week too, just with how he's been playing this last I don't know, last half, last third, whatever part of the season. But shout out to Christian Scott because he was a guy that I know earlier this year and even towards more the middle of the year, he was always kind of that. You talked about, I guess, technically there was 5 or 6 guys kind of battling for those outfield spots, and he was always my kind of guy left out. He was always
Mm-hmm.
a solid fielding option in my mind. Probably solid pinch running option, but he was never. I think I had said before, like if we haven't seen it to this point with Christian Scott, like I don't know if we're ever going to, and he's going to be more than what we had seen up until that point. Dude has proven me 100% wrong, and I mean he's been one of your more crucial players. I'd say within this last I don't know third of the season maybe. I mean he's been a guy that we talked about Dreiling earlier in the year, Tears at times, Merritt, but he's been the guy most consistently here lately that you can't take him out of the lineup. So I was hand up, bigger man here. I was wrong. I was wrong.
Hey, we appreciate honesty. So you were just laying it out there, and you're a man. You manned up about your mistake, and I
I
think
mean,
Tony Vitello did that too.
yeah. I
After
mean,
that second game.
he looks like a 5-tool player right now. Like he's doing everything well. So if he can carry that into the postseason, like we talked about Griffin Merritt at some points being the X factor, being another weapon. If it's him too, I mean, look out.
And it's amazing he's still even here with you know the transfer portal
Yep.
and how easy it is to just try to find greener pastures. And it ain't always that way, but for a guy that hasn't have as big of an impact as probably he'd like in his Tennessee career, for him to still be on campus, I think speaks a lot to him and speaks a lot to this program that they're able to keep convincing him, hey man, just trust in us, keep coming back. And it seemed to work out pretty well so far for him this year. I think
And
he's like second on the team in average in SEC play. So I mean, he's been lighting it up.
And shout out to those guys too, just because it seems. I mean, you mentioned the transfer portal, but just especially the transfer portal, NIL nowadays, it seems like guys like him are just they're few and far between. Just because it probably takes some convincing to say, hey, keep trusting in us. You're going to get your shot eventually, or like you'll have this kind of role. But at the same time, like you wonder how much of it too is like he just loves Tennessee. Like he
Mm.
loves the place that he's at. Like I understand playing time. I understand especially NIL now. If there's another opportunity, I I hate to hate on people nowadays just because seeing what other guys can get, it's hard to convince somebody to stay when there's not really a role carved out for them. So any guys that are doing that nowadays too, I just have another level of respect because I don't know Christian Scott, but I'd say a lot or a fair amount of it too is probably like he's proud to wear the orange and white now at this point, and it seems like a lot of those guys too have this kind of breakout towards the end of their careers. It's almost like they're rewarded for staying that long. So
Yeah.
it's just another level of respect for guys in today's times that I have for guys like that.
And those people that like aren't huge baseball fans, I don't know how you're not a fan of baseball if you didn't watch that Christian Scott home run and his dad ended up with the home run ball. I mean, that's electric, number one, because you're finally getting that road series, hopefully hosting a regional or at least fighting for hosting a regional, and he hits a no doubter,
Yeah.
and it was over at that point. As soon as he hit that ball, there was no coming back from South Carolina. And for him to get that ball, I think it is pretty special and just kind of shows you how beautiful this sport can be.
Everything lined up. You see it. It's even better when it happens for your team too. But those are the kind of moments where you just even as even as much of a Yankee hater as I am, like even something like that, it's still just cool to see, no matter what team it is.
So you're a big Jeter guy.
I don't mind Jeter. Don't mind Jeter.
Okay.
But
Okay.
he's about the only him and Mariano Rivera, about the only two Yankees that I don't despise.
Judge, you don't like Judge? You're not a big Judge guy?
I'll be judge a guy.
Oh my god, unreal. Um, let's talk about the games. So game one, Andrew Lindsay shoved. I mean, I guess we can just talk
Yeah.
about starting pitching just shoved, but 8 1/3, 3 hits, no runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. I mean, he just kept everybody in that South Carolina was, just fooled. I mean, they had no answer for Andrew Lindsay, and man, he just set the tone for the entire weekend with that performance. Hunter Inslee did, again, 4 for 5, 3 RBIs. Dylan Dreiling hit that 2-run shot. And then Aaron comes in there. And just when you might think, like, man, if we get a couple hits together, maybe, we can get back in this thing. Aaron Combs is just like, I'm just going to strike out 2 guys and just make it look absolutely filthy.
He's done that several times this year.
Dude, it's so gross. I mean, his swinging, I'd like to see his, swing and miss rate because it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, and it's I love the difference between those two starts too, just because I mean, one Dolander and Lindsay. I don't know if it's just me; they kind of look alike in like their styles, but it showed both were dominant, but in two completely different ways. Because Dolander, what he ended up with was it 13
Yeah,
strikeouts, 14
13.
strikeouts,
Yeah.
and looked effortless doing it. And then you go look at Lindsay's start, and he went longer into the game, but I mean, shorter game for Dolander in that one, but still comparatively went longer in the game, but only 5 strikeouts. But both guys had the other lineup look like they had no clue what was coming. I love seeing the two different styles like that, just because I'm a Braves guy, obviously. So back in the day, it's before my time, but like just watching highlights, you see guys like there's the Greg Maddux that he's nasty, but never going to be just like blowing people away. But then there's John Smoltz, and they're both dominant, but it's two different styles, and
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to see that in college as well.
Yeah, I mean, he just pop. I mean, it was kind of the same thing with Drew Beam. It was pop flies. It was just location, just painting the corners, um, ground balls. I mean, it just looked like it just felt like South Carolina just couldn't put a barrel on a baseball, and that's a lineup that has hit a lot of home runs and made a lot of pitchers come out of the game early, and Andrew Lindsay just was like, "This is my game. I'm a dog."
And Lindsey does throw harder than Maddox, just to clear that up. But just in this specific game, it's just that more of you don't really want to call it finesse because he's still shoving, but kind of was a little bit more of a just missing bats kind of style.
Well, that's kind of cool. I mean, Greg Maddox is a Hall of Famer to say that. Hey, I throw harder than Greg Maddox.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
What'd you do today, Greg Maddox?
Yeah. And in game two, it's kind of that pitcher's duel. Mahoney pitched really well for South Carolina. Dolander had a career day with 13 strikeouts. Um, the only run we had, Christian Scott had an RBI to bring in Zane Denton. And then Tony goes to Burns with 1 out in the sixth. It's one of those things. It's woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, looking back, yeah, it's probably a mistake, but that wasn't Tony's fault that Tennessee had 3 hits up to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'd completely forgot about it being 7 innings. So when he first made the move, I was even more confused. I still don't think I would have done it just because, I mean, I think they even mentioned on the broadcast, but I could kind of tell like it looked like he was getting more dominant as the game was going. I know he gave
Yeah.
up the hit there in that inning, but at the same time, like he was still shoving 98. Like he was not losing anything. So, I mean, if it happened to anybody else, like it'd probably be a little bit more confusing too. I get why you go to Burns there. Like you don't want to have that game slip away at all at that point. So why not give it to a guy that since he's been coming out of the bullpen has been shutting people down. So I still wouldn't have done it, but I I understand where he was coming from a little bit more. It's one of those moves where if Burns comes out, strikes the side out, like nobody bats an eye at it. So
Right.
it's I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
It's
Hindsight's 2020. It just didn't work out for you. The announcers, it was the all-time announcer jinx. It was like they're bringing in the best closer in
yeah,
America.
yeah,
Of course, it turns out that way.
yeah,
And it's insane. Like South Carolina didn't have an answer for anybody they faced. Aaron Combs, AJ Russell struck out 3 when he came in on Saturday. They didn't have an answer for anybody, but they hit Burns, which again, baseball is a crazy, insane sport, um, and anything can happen. So yeah, it's just unfortunate the way that game kind of turned out. I hate it for Dolander most of all because he absolutely doesn't deserve a loss by his name, but he ends up with one because he gave up that hit. And the only reason, like, I don't understand, I don't like taking him out at that point because, like you said, he was just eating them up. And the one guy that had the single hit going into that inning gets another hit. Like he's already gone. Like he's already you're not going to face him again. So I just didn't understand why you not try to give him another one to. If he gets another out, then you let him keep going. If he lets the next person on, then yeah, go to Burns.
Yeah, and I don't think it's anything to be concerned about with Burns. I don't really hate the move from Vitello. Like I get it. I assume Frank Anderson calls pitches, correct?
Yeah,
So shockingly enough, I love Frank Anderson. I mean, he's probably the best pitching coach in America for my money. I mean, with what he's done here in his time here in the last few years,
sure.
that was odd pitch calls to me. It looked like with Burns, they were saying, we're not going to be able to hit his slider, so let's just sit on his fastball. And they just kept throwing fastballs and they just kept hitting them. I'm like, at a certain point, like, dude may have the dirtiest slider in America, too. Like, you know, new count, like, start him off with a slider, but they
Yeah,
just kept trying to pump fastballs by him and they kept getting turned around. So
yeah,
more than anything, I thought the pitch calling there was just odd to say the least.
yeah. And you get a couple ground balls in that get through that
Yeah.
maybe could have been caught, should have been caught. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I make those plays, but maybe Zane Denton and Maui Ahuna think that they maybe should have made that play. I don't know. It looked like Zane just kind of dove over top of it, and then Maui just kind of reached for it, but maybe didn't just sell out for it.
Yeah.
Ended up turning into another run. So it was just a big inning, and you get a ground ball, you feel good about it because that should be a double play. It ends up getting through, and so yeah, I mean it sucks again, but I'm kind of like you. I don't hate it. I don't hate going. I hate taking the guy out that's dominating the game. That's what I hate.
Yeah. And I say that about Frank Anderson, but at the same time, I don't know that I would have done anything different because Dolander's blowing fastballs by him. So, why not
Right.
say, hey, bring your fastball out? But maybe it's just, I mean, sometimes it can be just as simple as switching from a righty to a lefty. In this case, maybe it's just a difference of, a different arm slot coming from that
Yeah.
right side makes it a little easier to hit.
Or it's like, thank God he's out of the game. We have some confidence.
Right, right. Sometimes it can just be something as simple as that. And I mean, the ground ball to Zane was smoked. He did kind of give it a little sidestep, but hit that hard. I mean, I don't blame him. The one to Maui still, it would have been a tough play. I'd like to see him maybe lay out for that one, but even in that case, like I don't think he's getting up and firing across in time. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of just two perfectly placed ones with some exit velo coming off of them.
Yeah. And then game three, there's that Drew Beam and that beautiful purple glove. He's back. He's back and he's getting pop flies, kind of like Andrew Lindsay. I mean, he's gonna people are gonna hit the ball. Now they're gonna hit it pretty weak. Like those pop flies, like the ground balls. I mean, how many double plays did he get out of a jam with? It felt like a lot in that game. So I mean, he was pitching well, and I think every time he got out of a jam, I think there was 3 different innings where he left a guy on third. Um, I mean, every time it just seemed like Tennessee got all the momentum back as soon as he would do that. And they his some long balls. Griffin Merritt hit one. Cal Stark hit one. Christian Scott had that big 3-run home run. I mean, and Tennessee just kind of into that game, just kind of ran away with it. And South Carolina was just like, let's get this over with.
Yeah, but Drew Beam the most Maddox of all of them. That would be the best comparison. But yeah, that
Also throws harder than Greg Maddox.
does. Yes, he does. Yeah, that's. I was gonna say something stupid there, but no, I was gonna say maybe me after a couple of Red Bulls would throw harder than Greg Maddox, but no, that's still not happening. But yeah, no, he's just they. we talked earlier about vintage Dolander, like that looked like a vintage Drew Beam start too.
Yeah,
Like I talk about these guys like they're 37, been in the big leagues for 14 years, but at times we've
it
seen them
might
so
be it one day.
much. Yeah, we've seen them so much at times that you get so used to them. It's weird. And that's why Dolander was so confusing earlier this year because it's like, man, it's just sometimes it's just it can be purely mental. I think he had a comment that he said, after his performance the other day, where it was like I almost took it as like a medical thing, but then I realized that wasn't what he's saying. He said he felt 100% there, like he was fully in it then. So I mean, sometimes it can be something as simple as that.
Well, he was fired up on the mound, so I know that's we don't see a lot of emotion from him, but I think at times like you finally break through and you have that kind of game, you feel it a little bit. So yeah, it was good to see him do that, and Drew Beam again. Struggled the last two outings, but really put it together a complete Drew Beam game, and um, that was another one. I'm like, man, I just keep them in. As soon as they went to AJ Russell, I'm like, man, do you? But you're up 12-1. I guess it doesn't matter at that point. But Tony did kind of have a reasoning behind the Burns thing. He said, with these 7 inning games, he's like, I don't not want to use those guys. You want to pitch them, you want to get
Right.
them some innings. So I get that. Again, just didn't work out. But
And I don't know when else you would have used him. I mean, he makes a
yeah,
good point there because I mean, at no point was there any indication Andrew Lindsay was coming out until it just kind of became more of a pitch count thing for him. Honestly, if you don't with in Dolander's situation right there, you're thinking like, man, if we drop this one, we can't drop the next one. So you're kind of in a do or die scenario there.
mhm.
So yeah, I get it. That's I don't know. I mean, in cases where I'm not worried anything about it, just because I'm like, that's have we seen Burns get touched like that his entire career here? No. Will we see it again? Probably not. And
Yeah.
you won the third game, so that covers up a lot of it.
Yeah, and again, that's just the big part about this is you lose the way that you do, and then you got to turn around and play another game. And it just seemed like it didn't really phase Tennessee all that much. And I think Drew Beam is a big part of that. Having him pitch the way that he did, it's got to give your team some confidence, and at least give those batters like, hey man, we gotta pick him up. We can't do the same thing that we did to Dolander to Drew Beam. So I think that was huge in that game to finally get those bats going to kind of say like, hey, we're not having another game like we did last game, where we only had 3 hits. And Mahoney was definitely their best arm that they threw all weekend. I know that again they've dealt with some injuries at that pitching position, um, and so I wasn't shocked at all to see them kind of hammer that last pitcher that they threw.
May have just pissed him off just the right amount to come out in that third game and be like, hey, can't sleepwalk through this one because and they realized how big that game was and
Yeah,
they jumped on him from the beginning.
yeah. Did Tony Vitello just go in there and just be like, guys, y'all suck on the road?
Yeah, he may have.
Prove me otherwise.
He may have just grabbed Dolander by the collar and just held him up like, "You see what you did to our boy there."
Yeah, yeah. This is what you did.
He finally gets it all together and you blow it for him,
Yeah,
and then yeah, whatever happened. If we had to sacrifice a Burns outing like that for coming out with our hair on fire in the third game like that, sorry to Chase, but to Burns that's I'll take that trade.
right. Yeah, every day of the week.
I'm sure he wouldn't, but
Right. Well, postseason's finally here. Hoover starts on Tuesday. Tennessee will play. They're the number 7 seed in Hoover. They will face number 10, Texas A&M, who Tennessee swept earlier this season. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess it's hard to beat a team twice. I guess it's even harder to beat a team 4 times. But yeah, maybe we can do that. I think we beat Vandy 4 times last year, so why not A&M?
yeah, and I don't think A&M's anything like Vandy's level last year, so I mean, I don't. It's another game away from Lindsey Nelson though, so that worries me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is, like, I feel like you've proven to yourself a little bit. Hey, we can win on the road. It can be done.
Yeah,
Um, And then like you're still kind of in that same mentality. It's like, hey, if we really want to play at home, come regionals, we need to win this game on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I feel like Tennessee is really in the conversation now, but a lot of it kind of depends on the rest of the field. Who wins, who loses. Alabama, Auburn kind of sit in that same position that Tennessee's in. Maybe even South Carolina. My argument for South Carolina not being host is look at the way that they've kind of played the last few weeks, and look at the way Tennessee's played. Now Tennessee beat them, and that should be I guess the end all be all of that. But um, looking at teams that should host, I mean Tennessee's won 15 out of their last 19, 11 of their last 15 SEC games. So I mean, what team? You're looking at the best conference in America. One of the hottest teams in this conference right now is Tennessee.
I don't want to leave it up for them to decide just because, I mean, they on the broadcast they were already, and I mean it's a valid point, but on the broadcast they were already mentioning, South Carolina, how banged up they are at this point of
Oh
the season.
God.
It's like, yeah, like I get it, fine, whatever, but at the same time, like even where we had that stretch of what was it, 9 or 10 this year, like even then I remember saying like, it was nice we were winning them, but it still didn't really feel like we were clicking on every cylinder. I feel like this point of the year is where I've seen that the most at any time this season
Mhm.
is we look like a complete team right now. Like there's nothing that really stands out where I'm like, that could get us. Like it seems like any of the losses lately haven't been just like collapse where you looked back and you're like, oh, that's where it fell apart there. Like it's looked a lot more like Tennessee baseball here lately. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they go more by overall season resume. I don't know if they're going to go by who's hot lately. Either way, though, I mean, I don't know how you don't put Tennessee ahead of South Carolina after this series. That's just me, but you know, we've
Yeah.
we've seen this song and dance before, so I don't want to
Yeah.
leave any excuse for them.
Yeah. I mean, body of work is definitely um, up there, but I mean, you look at Tennessee had to play those top four seeds. I don't know other teams had to do that too, but Tennessee did sweep Vandy.
Yeah,
Um, they did get swept by Arkansas, but they took one from LSU. They took one from Florida. We should have taken two, if not swept LSU. Um, the one thing that I'm just like, man, I cannot get over is that Missouri series, and maybe it helps Tennessee. It was so early in the year. Man, that it's so head scratching. Just looking at Tennessee's schedule as a whole, and look at all the wins and losses. Like, how did they? It's amazing that we are the 7th seed after getting swept by Missouri. How about that?
that's
Well,
I
let's flip it on its side and like this is speaking of that, us look at how Tennessee's done besides that series.
the only thing I can say with that series, looking back on, is just that's college baseball because that's
Yeah.
that's college baseball, and that's a Missouri earlier in the year where it's cold.
Mhm.
That's it. Nothing stats related, nothing analytics, nothing. With the way that the game is played, would explain that series because
Yeah.
I don't have any rational thought behind it. But to me, there's something to be said for not only did you have to play the top four seeds, but you played them 4 weeks in a row, like and you swept one of them. And like you said, you probably there's probably a pretty good argument that you could have took two other ones. When let's not forget that you were not playing good baseball at that time of the year.
Mm-mm.
Besides the Vandy series, like I mean, looking back on that, like excluding them, that was the time of the year where on these shows we were like, man, we really just kill ourselves sometimes, don't we? Like
Yeah.
so to have those four is one thing. To have them four in a row when you're not playing great ball and you're still competitive for the most part, like I think that should factor in. Will they go
Yeah.
back and look at it like that? I don't know, but maybe that's the orange in me, but I don't know.
Yeah, and getting Jared Dickey back in this lineup is huge too because I mean, not only is he your best hitter, he's a leader on this team, and I think they kind of go as far as Jared Dickey does, Derek Dickey, if you will, on Facebook. That's what they
Derek.
call him.
Yeah.
So, um,
Good to know Vol Facebook still chugging along.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I lost all train of thought thinking about Facebook.
That's what they do when they make a post too. They just lose all train of thought.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that is huge. Again, not knowing if he's gonna be back this weekend or not, and he comes back and kind of looks like his old self, getting on base. Again, like he kind of did it last year. He'd come in and pinch hit when he was still dealing with the injury, and he'd still get on base. Now he wasn't running very fast at all, which I love Jared Dickey, but I don't know how fast he is anyway. He's not made for speed, and that's fine. No one's looking at him in the MLB and be like, man, he's a really good runner. No, they're looking at that freaking bat and that average. That's all they're looking at.
Him losing speed doesn't drop his value at all.
No,
It
no,
just see ball, hit ball. That's Jared Dickey, and
they don't care if he's still on bases.
I think you could chop one of his arms off, and he'd still be see ball, hit ball, and put it on base. And I'm like, you have one arm. You could crawl to first base. Just get
Yeah,
there. We
yeah.
can pinch run for you, son.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that is big getting him back because, I mean, you look at was it the first game on Saturday, your top four hitters 0 for 10. And that's just not something that you want to see. You're not going to win very many baseball games when your top four of your lineup are going 0 for. So having Jared Dickey back, I think you can chalk one up. He's getting a hit, at least one
Yeah.
in a game. He's not going 0 for. So I'd like to see kind of more of getting him healthier, getting him back in the lineup. Does he play Tuesday? I think that'll be kind of a telltale sign of if he's all the way back, or are they still going to rest him a little bit?
Jared Dickey getting a hit is one of the most guaranteed things in sports if you could bet on it. Blake Burke hitting leadoff is not something that I would have ever bet on. So that's in two different games, it's two different ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah. Let's talk about Blake Burke a little bit. It just I don't know how to explain it. It just I mean he has games where like he gets hits. It's not really anything like that. It's just like he's not barreling up baseballs like he was earlier in the season.
I think it was a couple weeks ago when I said he just doesn't look comfortable to me at all.
Yeah.
Like the couple changeups that he saw, like it looked like he hadn't seen a changeup before, and obviously he has, and he's mashed changeups before. So that just tells me that his mind's just not on it right now. Now,
yeah, are you just putting him at leadoff to try to get him at as many at bats as you can, or you just trying to switch things up because
maybe
Matt hit well at the bottom of the lineup.
my only thought with that is, maybe he's most likely to see a fastball there, just jump on one early, and maybe that's what gets him going. I don't know, because I mean I don't know. The changeup.
He's rolling over on about every ball that he gets now.
Yeah, and with those changeups, you could see that you don't really call it depth perception, but just reading the pitch, like he just didn't look on it. I don't know what it is, because I mean it's kind of the same thing we talked about with Dolander. Like eventually he's that talented, he's gonna figure it out, but it's just frustrating right now that I think it was a couple weeks ago. It was like, hey, these struggles are fine right now. Like as long as he, hopefully starts ramping it up right now, but still not a great performance that gives you a lot of confidence that maybe by the beginning of the tournament he'll get going. Maybe the rest of the lineup can carry a couple games. Then as you get close to a final, a semifinal, something like that, he can turn it on then. Because it's nothing. Because the rolling over, I don't even really credit that with his swing. Like it's just he doesn't look comfortable, and he's rolling over because he's just kind of swinging through everything that doesn't really know what he's seeing right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it just I'm kind of with you. It just looks uncomfortable. He's not like nothing's like a full swing. Everything's kind of a half swing. He's check swinging a lot and hitting a lot of foul balls that way. So yeah, it just seems like something's a little off. Now he's still the most dangerous hitter in your lineup. Like he can change a game with a swing of the bat, and there's no doubt about it. But yeah, he just looks a little uncomfortable, and has been for a while. I feel like.
Which is another good sign. I feel like that you're winning games right now, and you look like a really good team heading into the tournament. And arguably, your best power hitter is just non-existent right now. I mean, he was 1 for 5 if I'm reading that right, but I mean, still, that's like his average has taken a hit over the past few
Yeah,
months.
and that hit was a ground ball that he just hit it away from the shift.
Yeah.
Is all that, and just poked it over into to left field over there.
But hey,
So,
sometimes it's just something like that gets you going. So
yeah, I mean, Jared Dickey, he's going to make a living doing that.
yeah,
I mean, he just hits it where people are not.
I'll make the projection against Texas A&M. I think Blake Burke goes off. I'll call it
Okay,
right now.
I need a Burt blast.
I'll
Need more.
call. I'll say a 3 for 4 game with a bomb and 2 doubles.
Okay, I like that.
Definitely don't old takes expose me here, but
Yeah, and man, I saw a guy on Twitter. Do not
that's,
at players.
that's never a good way to start it. Yeah,
Do not at players.
no,
I mean, good God. He deleted his profile, but yeah, just don't be that person.
especially
It's
to Blake Burke like that. That's a
well
big.
he was that he mentioned Maui and Christian Moore.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, especially
Yeah,
Christian Moore.
yeah, Christian Moore is a fiery guy. I don't know
Yeah,
if you want to be messing with him,
I
but
I thought you meant Blake Burke. I was about to say, I was like, that's a death wish, nearly. I think.
well, let's hope it doesn't ever get to that point. But yeah, he did ask some players, but yeah, just don't do that. That's my one kind of life advice. I guess it's just never going to turn out well for anybody. I don't care. He said it was okay because he had 15 years of playing experience. I'm like, these kids are going to be professional baseball players. Like, your expertise is nowhere near what they've had. So, shut up.
Well, as quickly as he must have typed that tweet out, there must be some connection to his hand-eye coordination, that bat speed. That probably led to a 15-year career that stopped at the age of 15. So, so I don't
Poor
know.
guy.
I really hate Twitter sometimes,
Yeah. I was just like, please, just
and
stop.
Facebook, both of
It's
them.
one thing to do it and just like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, delete it. But it's one thing to just like defend what you just did.
Well, and it cracks me up. Those people would never say it in person, too. I would respect somebody even more if they said it in person. I'd be like, "Hey, you're stupid enough to come up and say that to somebody that could put you in your place." Like, okay, I
Or
respect that a little more. But then to just say it on Twitter and then delete your account and act like, "Oh,
yeah.
what happened?" Like, "Oh, yeah, that's the worst."
Or say it like you can post on Twitter, I feel like, but at least have your name on there. Don't have
Yeah,
just like a random profile picture and just some made up at name.
I'm sure he's back under user 287503 now. And feel me,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's just cracking his knuckles, getting back ready for it.
It was about like swinging at balls in the dirt. I'm like, do you think they not? Do you think they are trying to swing at balls in the dirt? No, but there's really good pitchers in this league. It happens.
Maybe he had a 6 iron in his hand when he was tweeting that out, and just I don't know.
Yeah. Maui said something back to him, and he was just like, he said something like, Maui, I'm just trying to help you, man. Like, I just see it, and I just am trying to help you out. I'm
Man,
like,
why won't you take my expert advice?
yeah,
Like, come on now,
exactly.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to help you. I'm
Appreciate
not
it,
I'm
coach.
I'm not the smartest man, but I would say with 99.9% certainty that advice wouldn't be anything of value to Maui Ahuna.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Again, going to be a high draft pick. So
But 15 years, who
15
knows?
years playing career. Good for him.
Who knows?
Um, so Tennessee moves up to 16th in the RPI. I think that definitely helps because I'm sure analytics people, nerds are making these brackets and these host sites. So I think that's good to see. 38 and 18 on the season, 16 and 14. And 16 and 14 is really impressive when I think at one point you're 5 and 10 in the
Yeah.
SEC. So, um, Yeah, definitely playing their best baseball right now, and we'll see when we get to postseason play what happens. I already reserved my tickets for regionals, so if we could go ahead and make that happen, that would be great. I would appreciate it.
I I'm curious to get your thoughts. I think you need 2 wins. Depend on who you beat.
Yeah.
Obviously, Texas A&M would be one. Depending on who that second one is,
Well, if you beat Texas A&M, you'll play Arkansas.
that I feel like a win over Arkansas should get you there.
Yeah, I feel like that's for sure. I feel like you leave no doubt if you win 2 games. I feel like if you win 1 game, I feel like you have a good resume for it. Now it depends kind of what everybody else does as well.
The 40 win mark would be nice
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see that. Just to see that would be nice,
yeah.
especially after some of the
But
stretches.
if you're looking at, I mean, rankings right now, Tennessee sits at 18 per D1 baseball. I mean, you would think like with this win, they're going to be in the top 16. So I think if you win 1 game, you lose to Arkansas. I don't think that should really hurt you that much. So I think Tennessee should be in that top 16 ranking. Now, does that mean a host side? It doesn't always mean that, but
Right.
I feel like 1 win should probably get you there, but two wins for sure. You're hosting.
And that part of me just wants to beat Arkansas just because it's Arkansas again
Yeah,
too. Just
yeah,
just
that'd
for
be
that
nice.
just for that level of it.
That'd be nice. I do want to mention Cal Stark because I this also guy this guy I mentioned on Twitter. I was going back and reading some of his tweets, um, and he was like, "Cal Stark is a for sure out when he gets up to bat." And then Cal Stark hit a home run, and he tweeted, "He's like, well, I'm an idiot," and I was like, "You said
Yeah.
it." But I mean, it just seems like it's really turned around since Cal Stark has been that mainstay at catcher, and I know the average isn't something that just jumps out at you. But the fact that he can leave the yard at any time, I feel like definitely gives a big boost to the bottom of that lineup.
Just because it's something you don't have with Charlie Taylor. That yeah, we've seen him do it in the midweek games, but I don't think anybody would bet on say you do play Arkansas. I don't think anybody would bet that Charlie Taylor can turn on one on that level. Now maybe he can, but uh, we've seen Cal Stark do it now. So
Yeah.
I
And man, that kid competes.
yeah,
Cal Stark competes. I mean, he's kind of got that little fire to him as well, but he'll bat flip, and I think he's done he's gotten better at catcher as the year has gone on. With his back picks, with throwing down the second base. I just feel like he's gotten a lot better at the position. And I think it's definitely gave Tennessee a boost by not having to put Jared Dickey behind the plate.
I don't think you're at where you're at, and I don't. To me, Tennessee's not a legitimate threat with Jarrett Dickey at catcher, just because I mean, despite what he may do behind the plate, just there's the toll that would take on him at this point of the year, where you don't need any extra toll on anybody, especially the guy that you really rely on the most to get your offense going. I'm glad that it. I'm glad that it's Kyle Stark. I'd be glad if it was anybody that would be going like this that would prevent that from happening. Just because I can't make any lofty long term projections with Jared Dickey having a catch.
Yeah. Anything else before we get into MVP?
I think that was it from me.
Cool. Let's do it. You want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's Andrew Lindsay for me. I
Okay.
mean, he set the tone. I think you could make a case for Dolander. I think you could make a case for me. Christian Scott's up there too. Just the way I talked about him to lead off the show. But we talked.
Frank Anderson too.
Yeah. I mean, we had talked before, like not quite as much, but you always kind of talk like who's that odd guy out. Well, now if you've say you have found your role for Burns and erase this last appearance from your memory, and you've seen what he can do in that role. If Andrew Lindsay can do anything close to what he just did on Friday night every time he comes out, which I feel like for the majority of the time since he's taken that role, he has. Now that's
Mhm.
obviously the best we've seen him. If he can give you 2/3 of that every time he goes out. That's filthy. Because now, again, excluding this last appearance, you have somebody that can do what Chase Burns, and I don't want to call him best closer in America because that's the jinx going right now. But you have somebody of that caliber
Mhm.
that can go multiple innings too. That changes. Again, it to me, it's going to come down to the lineup on how deep this team goes more than it will the pitching. But you're set if you can get that. Like I don't know how you can get any better.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with Andrew Lindsay too, it's like you get him. He sets the tone. Then you get two All Americans. That those like it doesn't get any easier after Andrew Lindsay. So I just love that aspect of like, hey, you get Andrew Lindsay. He's gonna shove it. He's a dog. And then you get the SEC Pitcher of the Year, and then you get a freshman All American in Drew Beam after that too. So it's just pick your poison. I mean, it doesn't get any like the whole weekend is just a grind, and I'm sure opposing lineups just freaking can't stand it.
And it looked like he just shocked South Carolina too with the way he performed, and it carried over into that second game too. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, they found it at the end, but when Doletter came out, it was the same story. Like
Yep.
it didn't change at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my MVP, I'm gonna go Christian Scott. Man, I just think he's just been such a cool story. I mean, for him to be in this program as long as he has, I mean, he was. I remember him pitch hitting in that SEC tournament in 2019. They put him in there to pinch hit to try to hit it like a grand slam. I think he hit it to the wall. We ended up losing that game to Auburn, but and for him to kind of stick it out the way that he has and not really gotten a ton of opportunities, for him to take advantage of every opportunity he's gotten this year, I think is a great story, and I love that his dad caught that home run ball. But yeah, I'm going to go him three for 8 on the weekend, 5 RBIs. I mean, he almost single handedly outscored South Carolina this weekend.
Yeah, and for many of the reasons that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like it's tough now because I don't know who the odd man out is now. Because how do you take him out? How do you take Merritt out? Dickey's not coming out, so I mean now you've got just a guy that hit a 2-run bomb, and then Kavara Steers, just scares everybody when he steps in the box.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. I
Yep,
think you kind of roll with what you got right now. Christian
yep,
Scott, Inslee, Dickey, and Merritt as your DH because Merritt's getting you a home run in the series. That's all that man does is hit
yep.
dingers. So, all right. Anything else?
That's it. I'm projecting what was my projection? 3 for 4 for Blake Burke, home
Okay.
run, 2 doubles against Texas A&M, and then we'll see what happens against Arkansas.
There you go. Mark it down. All right, guys. Well, Tuesday, tomorrow we will see Tennessee take on Texas A&M in the SEC tournament in Hoover. It should be around 1 or 1:30. I think that first game's at 9:30 a.m., which, man, that's brutal. Um, yeah, it should be a great series, a great weekend of great week of baseball, and then kind of see what happens for regional play with Tennessee. So, thanks for listening. Love y'all. See y'all.